The Laughing Cavalier here, presenting to you another tale of these troubled times. Today I shall be reviewing the 1960 film Sink the Bismarck. Released in 1960, it tells the story surrounding the Royal Navy's attempt to stop the Kriegsmarine's battleship Bismarck, considered the pride of the German fleet. Starring Kenneth More as Captain Shepherd, Karl Stepanek as Admiral Gunther Lütjens, along with a host of others, it remains to this day something of a cult classic for fans of World War II naval films. But exactly how accurate is it? Well, let us find out in this review of Sink the Bismarck. The film opens in February 1939 with some actual newsreel footage of the launch of the Bismarck. By the way, somebody uploaded the whole film to YouTube without the translation to this clip on screen, so if you hit the auto-translate button you get this.
Hamburg, den 14. Februar 1939. Heute beehrte unser geliebter Führer mit seiner Anwesenheit die Taufe des mächtigsten Schlachtschiffs, das die Welt jemals gesehen hat. 50.000 Tonnen groß, einen halben Meter des härtesten Panzerstahls rund um das Schiff und 8 Geschütze von 42 cm Kaliber machen dieses Schiff in eine unsinkbare Festung. Das Schlachtschiff Bismarck wurde seinen Elementen von der Enkelin des eisernen Kanzlers übergeben.
God, I love YouTube subtitles. After that we get the opening credits and get a brief recap courtesy of Ed Murrow, played by, well, Ed Murrow.
This is London. Ed Murrow reporting. To an American reporter, there is something very special about the people of this city, this island, this nation. Never in the long and stormy history of Great Britain have her fortunes been as low as they are in this spring of 1941. Britain is fighting alone for her very existence, fighting desperately. Yet her people remain steadfast and unflinching. Britain's allies have been defeated one by one as the dark stain of Nazi conquest spreads across the map of Europe. In Africa, Rommel is giving the 8th Army a very bad time. Greece has fallen, and the Luftwaffe continues to smash English cities. The worst news of all comes from the North Atlantic, where last month, German U-boats and surface raiders sank 600,000 tons of shipping. In this battle, Britain's lifeblood is at stake. This is the battle on which depends the future course of the war, the future course of British history.
Aside from doing a pretty good job of bringing people up to speed with how the war was going at this point, I think it is great that they got the actual Ed Murrow to effectively reprise his own radio broadcasts. He became famous during the Blitz for his nightly reports back home, which turned him into something of a legend. We now cut to underneath the Admiralty in Whitehall, and are introduced to where over half the film will take place. Right away, I have to praise the film for doing something different. Up until this point, most war films tended to focus on the fighting itself, whilst not mentioning the behind-the-scenes work that went to achieving these victories. This film is something of a novelty in that it focuses heavily on the intelligence officers of the Royal Navy, and them figuring out how to stop the Bismarck. Soon to lead them in this film is Captain Shepherd, played by Kenneth More. Oh, and by the way, this film is something of a reunion for the cast of A Night to Remember. I don't know if it was just coincidence or there were no British actors in the late 50s, but we have Kenneth More, who was Lightoller in that film, Lawrence Naismith, who was Captain Smith, Michael Goodliffe, who was Thomas Andrews, and Jack Watling, who was Joseph Boxall. Not relevant to the plot at all, but I thought it was an interesting thing to note. In the film, Captain Shepherd is taken over as head of operations, and immediately sets to work changing things, much to the annoyance of the other personnel.
We thought we might be of some assistance, sir. Not knowing your way around yet, sir. Is there anything I can do for you?
Yes, there is something you can do. A few moments ago, I saw a rating enter the war room without his jumper. From now on, everyone will be properly dressed at all times. I cannot have officers eating sandwiches on duty, Commander Richards, under any circumstances.
I'm sorry, sir. Won't happen again.
Excuse me, sir. I think you should know that Commander Richards stood 2 watches without relief, and
I'm sure Commander Richards doesn't need an interpreter, Miss Davis. I was also surprised to hear a Wren officer addressed by her Christian name. To me, this kind of informality is both irregular and inexcusable.
Now, this is where one of the first inaccuracies pops up. The character of Captain Shepherd, as are a fair few of the staff officers, are fictional. Shepherd being loosely based on the real-life Ralph Edwards, with elements such as his wife dying in an air raid and his son serving aboard HMS Ark Royal being fictional. However, this is one of those cases where an inaccuracy is made for specific purposes and actually works. Firstly, this film was released 15 years before information regarding the whole operation was made public, owing to it falling under the Official Secrets Act, so a lot of details weren't known. Secondly, it does add a bit more character to these people, otherwise the whole film would be then purely focused on the Bismarck, not to mention that the plotline with the son on Ark Royal fits in with the events, but we will get onto that later in part 2. Shepard soon gets an important message and goes to see the First Sea Lord. By the way, another thing. The film never seems to name any of the historical characters on the British side. They are all referred to by their rank and command. For the sake of accuracy, I'll refer to them by their historical names as well. So here we have the First Sea Lord, Dudley Pound, played by Lawrence Naismith.
I have a signal here, sir, from our naval attaché in Stockholm. He reports 2 large German warships steaming through the Kattegat.
What ships are they?
He doesn't say.
Think it might be the Bismarck? It's possible, sir. She's just completed 3 months' training in the Baltic.
Couldn't pick a better time to break out, could they? With this creek business going on and our convoys scattered all over the ocean.
I have a nasty hunch that's the idea, sir.
I hope for once you're wrong. Can't afford to have that monster on the loose. Look what Scharnhorst and Gneisenau did to us.
22 ships sunk. 115,000 tons.
All in 2 months. And they don't have anything like Bismarck's firepower.
She could stand off and sink every ship in a convoy without ever coming under fire.
Shepard, get on to the Commander-in-Chief Home Fleet. Tell him we're not sure, but we're very much concerned. Tell him we'll let him have every scrap of information we get.
Aye, aye, sir.
Now, in reality, by this point, the Royal Navy knew full well that the ships were Bismarck and Prince Eugen, since this photograph was taken as they passed by Sweden, confirming the presence of the German ships well before they set out on their mission. But again, as mentioned, this fact was a secret at the time the film was made, so is easily forgiven. In the film, we get a scene to explain them finding out that they are the ships by having a member of the Norwegian resistance report that it is them, ultimately costing his life. I think that is a good addition, even if it didn't happen exactly like this. The scene helps highlight the efforts of the various resistance members across occupied Europe. Meanwhile, the First Sea Lord and Shepard look over the situation.
Enemy ships were sighted coming out of the Baltic. Obviously heading out to sea. Obviously not in the service of the King. Now, what have we got over here at Scapa Flow? Battleships King George V, Prince of Wales, battlecruiser Hood, and a few cruisers and destroyers. The rest of the fleet's out on convoy escort.
Excuse me, sir. It's from Admiral Cunningham, sir. Situation in Crete is deteriorating. German airborne troops have captured Malmö airfield.
Why is it we never get our bad medicine in small doses? Perfect timing for an enemy breakout in the North Atlantic. Cunningham and his fleet busy down here in Crete. Somerville's got his hands full trying to reinforce Malta with Force H. Scharnhorst and Gneisenau are up here at Brest ready to come out again, so we must keep them covered. And 16 convoys to guard scattered all over the Atlantic. If we had 100 more ships, we still wouldn't have enough.
Again, this does a good job at showing just how seriously the Royal Navy took the threat of the Bismarck. With hindsight, it would be easy to dismiss the Bismarck as irrelevant since air power and the submarine were proving to be the kings of naval combat. But with British forces stretched very thin and the entry into the War of America and the USSR some months away, just having these ships loose on the Atlantic could pose a serious threat. We're introduced to the main British admiral who will fight the Bismarck, Admiral John Tovey, commander of the Home Fleet, played by Michael Hordern.
Hello, Jack. How are you?
I'm fine.
Those 2 German ships were sighted off southern Norway at 0335. One is the Prince Eugen, and we're not sure about the other.
Do you think it's...
I suggest you proceed on the worst possible assumption that it's Bismarck and she's trying to break out.
We're directed to assume that it's Bismarck accompanied by Prince Eugen, and they're attempting to break out into the convoy lanes. Now, gentlemen, they'd have 4 available passages, wouldn't they? There's the Denmark Strait, the passage south of Iceland, the Faroe-Shetland passage, and the Fair Island Channel between the Orkneys and the Shetlands. Anyone care to place a bet?
What about the Iceland-Faroes Channel, sir? Not too near our bases and plenty of room for maneuver.
Well, why wouldn't you take the nearest exit? Fair Island Channel's only a few hundred miles.
Much too close to our air patrol.
You're of no help to me, gentlemen. All you're saying is that it could be any one of the 4. Actually, of course, you're perfectly right. I'm afraid, somehow or other, we've got to guard them all.
Have we any idea where they are now, sir?
Nothing definite.
With this in mind, reconnaissance aircraft are sent out, and the Bismarck is soon located, but it cannot be attacked due to poor visibility. Meanwhile, back at the Admiralty, Shepard is trying to find more ships to divert to the Home Fleet.
Now, Miss Davis, take the Arethusa from OG-62 and put her with the Home Fleet. Good. Now take the Victorious from that convoy forming up in the Clyde, WS-8B, put her with the Home Fleet. Take the Repulse from WS-8B and put her with the Home Fleet.
OB-325 hasn't maintained his speed during the last 24
Right.
hours.
Home Fleet looks better now, doesn't it?
Well, yes, sir, but I wouldn't give much for the convoy. You do recall that's a troop convoy, don't you, sir?
Yes, I do.
Well, they've got a long way to go around the Cape to the Middle East. This leaves them with practically no protection at all, sir.
I'm quite aware of the circumstances, Miss Davis. In my opinion, this is a risk we have to take.
We have to take, sir?
Well, Shepard, what do you have in mind?
I think we must reinforce the home fleet, sir. We can't expect them to patrol everything from here to Greenland with what they've got now.
Well, where do we get the ships?
We'd have to take ships away from other duty. It would involve some risk. We could take Victorious and Repulse off escort duty. That would give the Commander-in-Chief an aircraft carrier and another battle cruiser.
What convoy were they covering?
A W-8SB, sailing from the Clyde tomorrow. It's a large troop convoy, sir. 20,000 men. We'd be exposing them to a long and dangerous voyage without proper escort.
Is that what you're recommending?
Yes, sir.
You're willing to gamble the lives of 20,000 men?
I think there's a difference between a gamble and a calculated risk.
Good for you, Shepard.
Of course, sir, I realize it's not an easy decision to make.
The important ones never are. All right, go ahead and detach those 2 ships from the convoy. Inform Commander-in-Chief, Home Fleet.
Aye, aye, sir.
Now, whilst this film is focused on the operation against the Bismarck, it really does a good job at showing just how hard it was to fight the naval war. Throughout the war, the Admiralty had to make many life or death decisions like this that were necessary if we were to win, so again, I really do have to praise the film for showing this often forgotten part of the conflict. Finally, we are now introduced to the Bismarck itself, and I'm afraid to say that this is probably the weakest part of the film.
The weather report is very good, Admiral. 2 days of heavy overcast.
Good news. Is it not so, Captain?
It is, sir.
Thank you, Bernard.
We have a most interesting chess game here, Lindemann. The important moves this time are the opening.
To break out into the Atlantic will not be easy, sir.
Yes, but we have the advantage.
Because they do not know what we are going to do. We can move out immediately, or we can hide for a while under this beautiful overcast.
Lindemann, we have a great opportunity here. I do not intend to let Group North or anyone else lose it for me. There can be great glory in this voyage. Glory for the Third Reich. Glory for us.
For you, sir. You are the fleet commander.
I will see that you are not forgotten. I was forgotten after the last war. Until the Führer came to power, I got no recognition, no promotion. I was ignored, just as Germany was ignored. The world only remembers the winners, Lindemann. We must make sure this time that it will remember us.
I'm sure it will.
Up until this point, I've very much praised this film, but the portrayal of Admiral Lutyens, played by Karl Stepanek, and Captain Lindemann, played by Karl Mörner, is almost borderline insulting. The real-life Admiral Lutyens was probably one of the most honourable officers in the Kriegsmarine. In 1935, at a time when Hitler was passing more and more laws to persecute the Jews, he's one of the few officers who directly complained about it, even going so far as to put it in writing. He had Jewish ancestry as well, so he had good reason to worry. Now, whilst he professed loyalty to Hitler, there are other signs he was not content with the regime. When Hitler visited the Bismarck not long before her mission into the North Atlantic, he used the traditional salute of the old Imperial Navy and not the Heil Hitler one. Not in itself a crime, but it has been interpreted as a subtle hint that he did not really like him too much. In this film, however, he might as well be some sort of cartoonish Bond villain. I mean, just look at the way he sits with his back to the camera, puffing on a cigarette that slowly reveals him. He might as well have an eye patch and a white cat on his lap. This film portrays Lutyens as a fanatical Nazi. A bit later on, he gives this speech.
Officers and men of the Bismarck, this is the fleet commander.
I can now tell you that we are going out into the North Atlantic to attack the British convoy system.
We are going to sink their ships until they no longer dare to let them sail.
It is true, we are only 2 ships.
But the world has never seen such ships. We are sailing in the largest, the most powerful battleship afloat.
Superior to anything in the British Navy. We are faster, we are unsinkable, and we are German! You cadet officers, you were selected by the highest authority to make this voyage. When you return to the fleet, you will have many inspiring stories to tell.
Stories of German sea power. Stories of Nazi victory. To all of you, I say this. Never forget that you are Germans. Never forget that you are Nazis. Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler!
Whilst I am sure quite a few of the young crew are growing up loyal to Hitler, the officers like Lutyens probably were not as loyal. In this film, though, he does a sort of good cop, bad cop sort of thing with Lindemann, which usually goes, "Hey, let us do this thing." "Are you sure about that, sir?" "Yes, Hitler told me to do it." Not only that, but the personalities and appearance of Lutyens and Lindemann are off as well. In real life, they were fairly close in age. Lutyens was about to turn 52, Lindemann was 47. Yet in the film, we have a 60-year-old Lutyens and a 39-year-old Lindemann. The personalities in the film are also bizarrely reversed. Lutyens appears to be the aggressive one, determined to carry out his mission and please the Führer, whereas Lindemann is more cautious and advocates for retreat at various times. In real life, it was the other way around. Lutyens was very pessimistic about the whole operation. He had pleaded with Admiral Raeder, the overall commander of the fleet, to postpone the operation until Tirpitz was ready, and also to have Scharnhorst and Gneisenau support the operation. But Raeder insisted on launching the operation at once. Lutyens even told Admiral Hans-Erich Voss that survival was improbable, and he went as far as to give his prized pocket watch to his son before setting sail.
My father always had his gold watch with him, a pocket watch with a spring lid. But this time he had left it behind, saying that it was to be given to me should he not return. Those were the last words I heard him say.
Lindemann, meanwhile, was a much more aggressive officer. At the Battle of the Denmark Strait, when Lutyens refused to give the orders to fire, he is alleged to have said, "I will not allow my ship to be shot out from under my arse. Open fire." I'll bring up more divergences from the historical characters at other points in the review. With the Bismarck and Prince Eugen now at sea, the British make their plans on how to deal with her.
Over here, we have the Hood and the Prince of Wales. They left Scapa Flow 40 hours ago. Here, we have the Repulse, the aircraft carrier Victorious, and the King George V. They've been steaming for approximately 18 hours. In this area, the cruisers Arethusa, Manchester, Birmingham. In the Denmark Strait, the cruisers Suffolk and Norfolk. We must assume that the Bismarck, in company with the Prince Eugen, is going to attempt a breakthrough to the North Atlantic. But we don't know where, and we don't know when. If it's here, or here, then the Repulse and the Victorious and the KG-5 will have to do the job. If it's here, in the Denmark Strait, then the Hood and the Prince of Wales will have to go after her.
I should think they could handle it very nicely.
Well, sir, Hood's a great ship. So is the Prince of Wales. But she's fresh from the builder's yard. No training for her crew. In fact, in this emergency, she had to put to sea with some of the contractor's workmen still on board. The Bismarck's a tough proposition for any two ships.
Again, I love how they subtly manage to drop in elements of the history, such as Prince of Wales still having civilian contractors on board when she set sail. The film also very accurately shows the position of the ships, with, as mentioned, the cruisers Norfolk and Suffolk covering the Denmark Straits, with Prince of Wales and Hood not too far away. We now go to the cruisers Norfolk and Suffolk, where they make a rather unpleasant discovery.
Ship bearing green 4-5!
2 ships bearing green 4-5!
Hard port, full ahead both.
Hard port, full ahead both, sir.
Shall we follow them, sir?
One element they didn't show here is that the Bismarck did open fire on Norfolk and Suffolk, and whilst it did not land any hits, it forced the cruisers to keep their distance a bit. After the Admiralty gets the news, the film goes to the battlecruiser HMS Hood, where we meet Admiral Lancelot Holland.
The intercepting course is 310 degrees. At full speed, we should make contact at 0300.
I don't want to engage them until daylight. Give me a course and speed to intercept at dawn.
Sir. At 27 knots, course 295. We should meet them at first light.
We'll proceed on that course at that speed.
Aye, aye, sir.
Pass the word to Prince of Wales.
Aye, sir.
Now again, one of the things the film doesn't really go into is the decision by Admiral Holland made before the Battle of the Denmark Straits. His original intention was to cross the T, as it is called in naval terms, that is, to sail in front of the Bismarck and Prince Eugen, so he could concentrate all of his firepower on the German warships, whilst they would only be able to, at best, return fire with half of their guns. In reality, the reverse would happen at the Denmark Straits, but I'll get onto that in a moment. At the Admiralty, there is some excitement as now HMS Hood, pride of the Royal Navy, is about to take on Bismarck, pride of the German Navy.
Prince of Wales are somewhere in here. Suffolk and Norfolk report Bismarck and Prince Eugen here. If so, we shouldn't have long to wait.
Should be getting light up there now.
Signal from Suffolk, sir. Have sighted Hood and Prince of Wales, bearing southeast, distance 15 miles.
That means they've made it. Good old Hood, she'll get them.
Another thing I like about this film is that, in this sequence before the battle, they show the preparations that went on aboard these ships in regards to the loading of their guns. The filmmaker was lucky in that they were able to make use of HMS Vanguard, the last British battleship ever built, which was scrapped not long after the film came out. The footage they managed to shoot aboard her is pretty impressive. Soon enough, Hood sights the enemy.
Smoke bearing green 40, sir. Bismarck and cruiser, bearing green 40, about 12 miles. Closing fast.
Those are not cruisers, they are battleships. Captain, open fire on the leading ship.
Target leading ship. Stand by to open fire.
Now, unfortunately, the film gets quite a few details of the battle wrong. They seem to show both forces in line of battle, the Bismarck and Prince Eugen sailing in what looks like an easterly direction, Hood and Prince of Wales in a westerly. In reality, as mentioned, Holland was trying to get in front of Bismarck and Prince Eugen, but the reverse happened. They ended up in front of him. We are fortunate that a man aboard Prince Eugen filmed some of the battle, and we can see Bismarck is behind Prince Eugen, whilst both ships are sailing in a westerly direction, meaning that the film has the ships sailing the wrong way and in the wrong order. Now, Bismarck was meant to be out front, but she had damaged herself when she opened fire on Norfolk and Suffolk earlier, so she let Prince Eugen take the lead. This may have inadvertently been to Bismarck's advantage, since Hood targeted the leading ship, assuming it to be Bismarck, and not realising till after a couple of salvos that they had been firing at the wrong ship. In the film, Hood and Wales should be steaming directly ahead, with only their forward turrets firing, since Holland, it is believed, wished to get as close as he could before executing a sudden turn to port, which would allow him to bring all of his guns to bear. Evidence suggests that he was partway through this manoeuvre when the Germans scored a critical hit.
What happened? The Hood's gone.
Now, in the film, it gives the impression that the shell hit and literally the entire ship blew up. And since we don't see any of the Hood's crew afterwards, we can assume they died in the explosion. This is probably due to the fact that they had to use a model, which couldn't perfectly reflect how the Hood exploded. In reality, what probably happened was that the shell hit one of the Hood's aft magazines, blew it up, with the explosion going through the ship and also exploding one of the forward magazines, blowing the ship into 3 pieces. The bridge crew actually survived the initial explosion, and I think the film missed a chance to show some heroic stories of the Hood's crew. Ted Briggs, one of the 3 men to survive the Hood, was on the bridge and told of what he saw there.
People started to get out towards the starboard door of the compass platform. It was as I got there, Commander Warren, the navigating officer, stood to one side and a polite little gesture just like that. And that sticks out.
Signal from Prince of Wales, huh?
Well, what is it?
It says HMS Hood has blown up.
Bring it here.
Signal from Suffolk, sir. Hood sunk. Prince of Wales and Bismarck exchanging fire.
Whilst HMS Hood was a rather obsolete ship by 1941, she had a lot of prestige to her name, and so the silence in the room in that moment is rather understandable. I do think they should have focused a bit more on the casualties, other than Ed Morrow briefly mentioning it in another radio broadcast, since out of its crew, only 3 men survived. A terrible tragedy that perhaps should have been brought up a bit more. Meanwhile, Prince of Wales now continues to fight Bismarck and Prince Eugen.
Port 20! Tell the engine room to give me everything they've got! Course 240!
Very good, course 240.
Now, I want to mention the captain of the Prince of Wales, John Leach, played by Desmond Knight. Or rather, I want to talk about the actor. Desmond Knight actually fought in the real-life Battle of the Denmark Straits. He was a lieutenant in the Royal Navy and was on the Prince of Wales's bridge with Captain Leach, when the Bismarck shells hit near the bridge, as it does in the film, killing and wounding several officers.
I remember looking towards Bismarck and suddenly seeing this line of orange flashes right across her side, which meant to us that she was using her fore and aft armament at us. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Range closing, then presently hearing this.
Desmond was wounded in that action and was permanently blinded in his left eye. I find it pretty amazing that years later he would play as commanding officer in a film of these events. Again though, some details of the Prince of Wales Battle of the Bismarck are left out. Since she had recently been commissioned, her gun turrets malfunctioned during the battle, further hampering her ability to fight Bismarck and Prince Eugen. They do show her pretty badly damaged and retreating though, giving us one of the few accurate bits of dialogue between Lutyens and Lindemann.
She's badly damaged, sir. She's turning away and making smoke. Do you want to pursue?
No. We have more important work to do. Hold your course.
Steady on present course.
Lindemann was very keen to follow up and sink the Prince of Wales, whilst the ever-cautious Lutyens wanted to disengage and get out of there. The discussion between the two may have been a little more heated than that, but in the end Lutyens outranked Lindemann, and so he had to obey. However, this brief moment is short-lived, and we now get another good cop, bad cop scene between the two.
You've beaten the best you have. Do you realize that?
Yes, sir.
They will never stop us. Not now.
You wanted the damage control report, sir.
What is it?
We received 1 hit, forward on the port side, over number 2 fuel tank. We are losing a little oil.
Anything serious?
No, sir. I would say the damage is very slight.
Very slight? That hit caused the bow to sink quite low in the water and lost her a lot of fuel, which, given that Lutyens did not refuel the ship in Norway before setting sail, severely limited her range, and thus forced her to head to a port to make repairs. Lindemann is correctly shown advocating they return to Norway for repairs, but in the film Lutyens replies with this.
We have fought our way out into the Atlantic. This is no time to turn and run for home.
We wouldn't be running, sir. We've won a tremendous victory.
But it is not the victory that was ordered.
You haven't been close to the High Command, Lindemann. Do you know what will happen when Admiral Raeder reports the sinking of the Hood? The Führer will smile, and everyone else will smile. And then, a few moments later, he will turn to Raeder with a scowl. What about the convoys, Raeder? Have they sunk any convoys?
There will still be plenty of convoys, sir, after we make repairs.
Is your ship unmaneuverable, Captain?
Are the guns damaged? Anything out of action?
No, sir.
Then we will push forward, as instructed by the High Command.
But surely, sir, the Führer must realize that
Are you now going to tell the Führer what he must realize?
No, sir.
Then do not tell me.
In reality, he ordered Bismarck to head for Saint-Nazaire in France for repairs. He also didn't confide this in Lindemann, probably causing even more tension between the two men. Again, whilst I've brought this up before, it does annoy me how their personalities are portrayed. In the film they are drinking champagne and celebrating after the Hood is sunk, whereas apparently the real-life Lutyens was rather unmoved by what had happened and did not celebrate. In fact, at this point his actions become rather erratic, with him sending constant messages to Berlin, informing them of his every movement, which was a major mistake. This is never really brought up in the film, although, again, that may well have something to do with not every detail about the battle being known back in the 60s. We now go back to the Admiralty, where Shepherd and his comrades receive a rather important message.
Minister for you, sir.
First Sea Lord here.
And now, First Sea Lord, I want to make it unmistakably clear that there is absolutely nothing as vital to the nation at this moment as the destruction of the Bismarck. You are authorized to employ any means at your disposal, regardless of risk and regardless of the price that must be paid. This is a battle we cannot afford to lose.
I understand, sir.
I don't care how you do it. You must sink the Bismarck. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
And so, with Churchill's famous order, I shall leave the review here for now. Part 2 will cover the hunt for and sinking of the Bismarck. Thank you for listening. This has been the Laughing Cavalier, wishing you a good day.